The house did not scream. It did not fight back. It simply went quiet. 70 years ago, on a night that looked like every other night, silence settled over a small home like a heavy blanket. No neighbors heard a struggle. No windows shattered. No voices begged for help, just stillness. The kind of stillness that makes the air feel thick. The kind that feels wrong even before you understand why. Inside that house lived Jennifer Gledhill. To the outside world, she was unremarkable, ordinary in the safest way. The kind of woman people nodded at politely and quickly forgot. She smiled at neighbors. She kept her curtains neat. In photographs from that time, her face looks calm. Soft eyes, composed posture, nothing sharp, nothing dangerous. No hint of what was coming, but photographs lie. They freeze a moment, not a truth. Behind Jennifer's quiet routine lived a secret she never intended to confess. A secret shaped by fear, loneliness, and a world that punished women more harshly than it forgave them. This was an era where reputation was everything, where a whisper could ruin a life faster than any crime, where shame was heavier than guilt and silence was often mistaken for virtue. Jennifer knew the rules. She lived by them carefully. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Coffee poured at the same time. The same polite greetings exchanged with the same neighbors. Her voice never too loud. Her laughter never too long. Her life looked controlled, predictable, safe. And that was exactly why no one noticed the cracks. Loneliness has a way of hiding in plain sight. It sits at dinner tables where conversation has died. It sleeps beside you without touching. It grows in marriages where words are replaced by habit. Jennifer's marriage was not violent. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, empty in ways no one could see from the outside. And then there was someone else. It didn't begin with desire. It began with recognition, a look that lingered just a second longer than it should have, a conversation that felt warmer than the others, someone who listened, someone who noticed the pauses in her voice, someone who made her feel seen in a life where she had become invisible. They didn't rush. They couldn't afford to. Every step was careful, every meeting wrapped in caution, words lowered, eyes watching doors. The secrecy itself became part of the connection. It made the moments feel dangerous, alive. Jennifer told herself it wasn't real, that it was just comfort, just understanding. She told herself she was still a good person, that no one was getting hurt, that she could stop any time she wanted. But secrets don't stay where you put them. They breathe, they grow, they ask for more. Each lie made the next one easier. Each stolen moment made the silence at home louder. Jennifer began living two lives, and neither one felt safe anymore. Her smile became rehearsed. Her thoughts wandered when they shouldn't. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her own breathing, wondering who she was becoming. In public, she was careful, but fear has a way of leaking through small cracks, a nervous glance, a hesitation before answering simple questions. Neighbors noticed she seemed distracted, quieter, as if she was carrying something heavy she couldn't put down. The man she trusted started wanting more time, more certainty, more promises. The thing that once felt like escape slowly began to feel like pressure. What had been secret and thrilling now felt unstable, uncontrollable. Jennifer stood at the edge of a truth she could no longer manage. Confession meant destruction. In that time, a woman caught in an affair was not just judged, she was erased. Her name, her standing, her future. Everything she had built through careful silence would disappear overnight. Fear began to shape her thoughts. Fear is dangerous when it feels cornered. On that night 70 years ago, nothing seemed different from the outside. The same house, the same walls, the same furniture absorbing every sound. But inside Jennifer's mind, everything was racing, thoughts overlapping, heart pounding, the secret pulling tighter around her chest. A conversation happened. Words were spoken that could not be taken back. The balance shifted, control slipped. And in that moment, Jennifer faced a choice she had never imagined making. The house stayed quiet. No one heard the decision being made. No one saw the hesitation. No one noticed the pause before everything changed. What happened next would erase one life and permanently alter another, even if the world didn't realize it yet. By morning, the sun rose the same way it always had. Light spilled onto the street. Neighbors opened their doors. Life continued unaware. The house looked unchanged, peaceful even. But beneath that calm surface, something irreversible had already occurred. And the silence that night was no longer empty. It was full of something waiting to be discovered. Love never announces when it turns dangerous. It arrives quietly, and it leaves destruction behind. At first, the affair felt small, manageable, a secret pocket of warmth in an otherwise cold life. Jennifer told herself it was harmless, just a pause from reality, a stolen hour where she could breathe again. She convinced herself it was temporary, that it would fade, that no one would ever know, that no one would ever be hurt. That was the lie she told herself first. Lies once spoken don't disappear. They demand attention. They require care. They need to be fed every single day. Jennifer learned this quickly. Each smile in public became carefully measured. Each casual question rehearsed in her mind before it was answered. Her voice stayed calm, even when her heart was. Her world split cleanly in two, the woman everyone saw, and the woman who only existed in stolen moments and whispered conversations. The closer she grew to him, the further she drifted from everything else. Home felt emptier. Familiar rooms felt colder. Conversations with her husband became shorter, more distant, filled with pauses instead of meaning. At night, Jennifer lay awake, staring into darkness, replaying words she had spoken and words she had almost said. Fear followed her everywhere. It was in the sound of footsteps behind her on quiet streets, in the sudden knock at the door that made her heart jump, in the way people looked at her just a second too long as if they could see through her. She started noticing things she had never noticed before. How gossip traveled faster than truth. How silence made people suspicious. How secrets changed the way the world looked back at you. Rumors didn't arrive loudly. They never do. They came as glances exchanged between neighbors. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Friendly smiles that felt thinner than before. Jennifer felt it even if no one said it out loud. Something was shifting, slowly, uncomfortably. The man she trusted began to change too. At first he was patient, understanding, gentle, but time does that to secrets. It makes them heavier, harder to carry alone. He started asking questions Jennifer didn't have answers for. When would things change? What were they really doing? How long could this last? Promises were made in moments of fear, then doubted in moments of clarity. Love, once soft, began to feel demanding. The warmth that had drawn her in now pressed against her chest like a weight. Jennifer felt trapped between two lives, both pulling at her, neither offering safety. Pressure builds quietly, then it snaps. Jennifer's thoughts grew restless. She rehearsed conversations that never happened, imagined confessions that ended in disaster. In her mind, every possible outcome led to ruin. Exposure meant shame. It meant losing everything she had worked so hard to protect. In that era, a woman's reputation was fragile. Once broken, it was never repaired. People didn't ask questions, they judged, they turned away. Fear stopped feeling abstract. It became physical, tight in her chest, sharp behind her eyes. She started making decisions not out of love but out of survival, every move calculated, every word chosen to maintain control, confession or concealment, truth or destruction. Jennifer believed she was choosing the lesser evil. She chose silence, chose manipulation. She chose to manage the situation instead of ending it. What began as emotional escape slowly transformed into strategy. She planned her days carefully, controlled meetings, controlled stories, controlled appearances. The lie became a structure she lived inside, but lies don't create freedom. They create cages. The affair no longer felt like comfort. It felt like obligation, like a threat waiting to expose her. The man she once trusted now represented danger as much as desire. His expectations frightened her. His questions made her feel cornered, and the walls of her carefully constructed life began to close in. Jennifer noticed how her thoughts were changing. She no longer asked what was right. She asked what was safest. She stopped thinking about consequences and started thinking about outcomes. In her mind, the problem wasn't the affair anymore. The problem was the risk, the unpredictability, the loss of control. And when fear becomes stronger than love, something dark begins to form. She told herself she was being practical, that she was protecting herself, that desperate situations required decisive action. She didn't see it as cruelty. She saw it as necessity, as something she had been pushed into by circumstance. But necessity is a lie people tell themselves to live with what they're about to do. The weight of the secret grew unbearable. Every day felt like a countdown. Jennifer sensed that time was running out, even if she couldn't explain why. The situation was unraveling faster than she could contain it, and deep down she knew there were lines that once crossed could never be uncrossed. The thought terrified her, and yet it stayed, lingered. The idea that there might be a permanent solution, that there might be a way to make the fear stop, to make the questions end, to make the danger disappear forever. Jennifer stood at the edge of something irreversible, even if she refused to name it yet. The descent was slow, almost invisible, but it was happening, step by step, lie by lie. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between her thoughts, a decision was beginning to take shape, one that would change everything. The chapter closes not with action, but with tension. With Jennifer awake in the dark, listening to the sound of her own breathing, realizing that the secret she once controlled was now controlling her. And knowing, deep down, that something was coming she might not be able to stop. It didn't announce itself. It didn't warn her. The moment simply arrived. No dramatic music played. No clock counted down. The night looked ordinary, almost boring, the kind of night people forget as soon as morning comes. But inside that quiet space, everything Jennifer had tried to control began to slip through her fingers. It started with a conversation, the kind that feels routine until it suddenly is. Words came too fast. Voices rose just enough to sound dangerous. Questions pressed harder than before. The man in front of her wanted answers Jennifer could no longer delay. His tone had changed. His patience was gone. He wanted clarity. He wanted truth. Jennifer felt it then, that cold realization. The secret was no longer hers to manage. It was unraveling. Exposure wasn't just possible anymore. It was close, too close. She imagined the whispers, the stares, the sudden distance from everyone she knew. In that time, a woman exposed wasn't corrected. She was erased, her name reduced to scandal, her identity rewritten by shame. Fear took over, not the kind that screams, the kind that sharpens, that narrows your vision until only survival remains. Jennifer's thoughts raced, colliding into one terrifying conclusion. If the truth came out, her life as she knew it was over. There was a pause, a moment where everything could have gone differently. She hesitated, a breath held in her chest. Time stretched thin, fragile, waiting for a choice. In that silence, Jennifer wasn't thinking about morality. She wasn't thinking about right or wrong. She was thinking about consequences, about control, about making the fear stop. Then she acted. What happened next wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it didn't look like the crimes people imagine in stories. There were no screams echoing through the house, no neighbors rushing to windows. It was close, personal, fast. A moment driven by panic, sealed by finality. When it was over, the room felt different. Heavier, the air changed. Jennifer stood there, frozen, staring at what she had done. The reality landed slowly, crushing and unavoidable. This wasn't a secret anymore. This was something else, something permanent. She was alone. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with a truth she could never outrun. Jennifer tried to steady her breathing, tried to think, tried to convince herself this was still something she could manage. She cleaned up what she could, moved carefully, thought about details she never imagined needing to think about. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow looked like judgment. She told herself to stay calm, to act normal, to survive. By morning, she stepped back into her life as if nothing had happened. She smiled when spoken to, answered questions, moved through familiar routines with unfamiliar hands, but something in her eyes had changed. The calm was gone, replaced by something brittle. Sleep became impossible. When she closed her eyes, the night returned. The pause, the moment, the action. Guilt has a sound, and it followed her everywhere. In the quiet hours, it whispered. In mirrors, it stared back at her, asking questions she refused to answer. Days passed. Then more. People began to notice an absence. A missing presence that couldn't be explained easily. Jennifer offered explanations, but they shifted. Small inconsistencies, details that didn't quite line up. She spoke carefully, but fear made her careless in ways she didn't recognize. Investigators eventually stepped in. Calm, methodical, observant. They listened more than they spoke, asked the same questions twice, watched reactions instead of words. Jennifer felt exposed under their gaze even when she said nothing wrong. Silence became suspicious. Timelines bent under pressure. Stories changed slightly, just enough to matter. Jennifer's attempts to appear composed only made the cracks more visible. The truth doesn't need to shout. It waits. It surfaces when people grow tired of holding it down. As the investigation deepened, Jennifer felt control slipping away again. The very thing she believed she had secured was unraveling. The crime she committed to protect her life was now threatening to destroy it in a different way. She began to understand something too late. There are choices that don't solve problems. They only replace them with bigger ones. The weight of what she had done pressed harder each day. Every knock on the door sent fear racing through her body. Every conversation felt like a test she might fail. The house that once felt safe now felt like a witness. Jennifer had crossed a line she could never uncross, and as the truth edged closer to the surface, she realized the worst part wasn't being caught. It was knowing that the moment she acted, everything she thought she was protecting had already been lost. The night that couldn't be undone wasn't over yet. Its consequences were still unfolding. The crime was over, but the story was not. It never really is. Jennifer Gledhill may have believed that the worst moment of her life ended the night she made her choice. That once the action was taken, all that remained was survival. But crimes do not end when the act is finished. They continue, quietly, patiently. They wait for consequences to arrive. The investigation did more than trace timelines and test alibis. It peeled back a life. It exposed fear layered beneath politeness, pressure hiding behind routine. A society where silence felt safer than honesty, especially for a woman. Jennifer's world was not just one of personal failure but of social expectation, where image mattered more than truth, where admitting desire could cost you everything. As evidence mounted, the narrative Jennifer tried to control collapsed piece by piece. The calm exterior she worked so hard to maintain could not survive scrutiny. Her words were measured, but her pauses spoke louder. Her explanations sounded rehearsed. The silence she relied on began to betray her. What emerged was not a monster from the beginning, but a human being shaped by choices. Jennifer was not born cruel. She was not destined for violence. She was once someone ordinary, making ordinary decisions, believing she could manage the consequences. The tragedy of her story lies in how small those early choices were. A look held too long, a truth delayed, a lie justified as protection. But secrets don't obey the rules we set for them. They don't stay contained. They don't respect intentions. They grow in the dark, feeding on fear until they demand something back. Jennifer believed she could control the narrative, the people around her, the outcome. What she failed to understand was that control built on deception is always temporary. The courtroom, the investigation, the public judgment that followed were not just about a single act of violence. They became a mirror held up to a larger reality, a world where women were given impossible standards, where emotional needs were dismissed, where shame was used as discipline. That context does not excuse what Jennifer did, but it explains how she arrived there. True crime stories often tempt us to simplify, to label people as evil and move on. But the uncomfortable truth is that most tragedies are built slowly. They are constructed from fear, from avoidance, from the belief that honesty will hurt more than lies. Jennifer's life after the crime was not freedom. It was a waiting room. Every day carried the weight of anticipation. Every knock, every question, every unexpected silence felt like judgment arriving early. The punishment did not begin with sentencing. It began the moment she understood there was no version of this story where she was at peace again. Years passed. Decades followed. Time moved forward, but the story stayed. 70 years later, Jennifer Gledhill's name still surfaces not because of the violence alone, but because of what it represents. A reminder that hidden lives always leave traces, that love built on secrecy rarely stays love, and that lies once chosen shape every future moment. This case forces an uncomfortable reflection. Morality is not tested in dramatic confrontations or heroic gestures. It is tested quietly, in kitchens, in bedrooms, in moments when no one is watching and the easiest choice feels justified. One affair did not destroy everything. The choices surrounding it did. One decision did not echo through time by accident. It echoed because it was made in fear instead of truth, because it replaced honesty with silence, because it attempted to erase consequences rather than face them. Jennifer's story ends on paper, in records, in court documents, But its lesson does not end there. It lingers because it speaks to something deeply human, the desire to be seen, the terror of being exposed, the belief that we can outsmart the truth if we just try hard enough. We can't. Some choices follow us longer than we expect. Some moments define us whether we want them to or not. And some secrets, once buried, do not stay buried forever. They wait. And they remind us that while silence may feel safe in the moment, it often carries the heaviest cost of all. The story fades, but the question remains. What would have happened if the truth had been told sooner?